Greetings and welcome to this course, Water and Physiology Part 2. And I wanted to start this course out with this discussion, this exploration of this concept called man's higher consciousness. I first came across this from reading the book Man's Higher Consciousness by Hilton Hotema, which was published in 1962. And this book pretty much gave me a good detailed introduction into the whole concept of de-evolution of mankind from a state of pristine environment into what we have today, not only externally but also internally, where man was nourishing off of a particular substance that was so clean that it allowed it to have certain types of benefits. And through the process of de-evolution, of going to the land and manipulating the soil and eating and consuming, that man became gradually enslaved more and more to its senses. And it looked for gratification and fulfillment through the taste buds and through the eyesight and through the hearing and all of those different senses that that are supposed to be given to us, they were given to us to be able to navigate this holographic matrix. And instead, when we identify too much with the ego, too much with this physical aspect of the universe, and saying to ourselves that we need to have something in order to survive, that we become dependent on it, and we end up having this effect where our physiology does not have the same benefits that it used to have. Its performance actually declines. This whole aspect of de-evolution of man, the process of de-evolution, essentially what Hilton Hotema describes is how man was originally a breatharian. It lived in the mountains, in the pristine environment of fresh mountainous air, and what happened was that it was getting cosmic rays to transmute elements within its body in order to transform itself. And so it was not dependent upon the earth to give it anything. It was literally just like a plant, breathing fresh air and soaking up the cosmic rays and using the technology of both water and light that we have spoken about in both the last course, Water and Physiology Part 1, and also Part 2 of the Nutrition Self-Mastery course when we went into the fourth phase of water. The idea is that our physiology is able to use water to build up the fourth phase of water, which literally charges up our battery cells, since every cell uses this technology to create the separation of charge, and then it can harness through that separation of charge an electrical current. So every cell in our body is a battery. And so breatharians literally use that technology. They cleanse themselves sufficiently that their waters are so clean from excess carbon and excess wastes that cells have a better capacity to transmute elements to whatever they need on demand. So the process of de-evolution, as far as Hilton Hotema described, and it kind of makes sense, like man eventually decided to walk down the mountain and enter the jungles or the forests or the prairies, and what it found was trees, well, fruit trees. And the first thing that man became was a fruitarian. That the first thing that it was easiest to consume was these fruits that are ready to eat. They're hydrated, they're full of sweetness. They actually called man to taste from it and spread the seeds and spread this whole idea of propagation, procreation, of all this sexual energy that comes from the sweetness taste. And so man became connected to trees and nature and the idea of being in harmony with the trees, with the forests, with whatever was supplied naturally. because you don't really need to tend a fruit tree that much. You just let it grow and it will give you a whole lot of fruits. But then man was tricked, I guess maybe tricked even further, to consume vegetables, to literally work, because you have to work to get something from vegetables. Vegetables don't just grow in monocrops like we see today. What happened was, the 10,000 years ago, the advent of agriculture led to people, at least civilization, to literally acquire tools and techniques to manipulate the earth, to upset it and upset all the ecosystems in order to have a plot of land for it. And through the process also, man became dependent on domestication of animals in order to create labor, to plow the land with less effort. They also manipulated rocks and to create the machinery, the tools that they needed. And so man gradually became more and more dependent on material objects to accomplish its need to consume substance, to consume this nourishment that it attributed to food. And then man became even gradually more enslaved to what we call today more of what the industrial age brought. That man began thinking in a scientific way that maybe all these diseases that were happening to people were happening because of invisible forces that are so tiny that we have to eliminate them. We have to bombard them with heat and destroy them. And so man himself created this process of pasteurization and destroyed the milk that was literally a good source of nourishment. But the application of heat or light or oxygen, these environmental stressors that you learned a little bit about in part 1 of Nutrition Self-Mastery, is that they denature, they harm substance, they disrupt or upset the atomic bonds between atoms that hold a molecule in its state, in its ennobled state. So processing food, applying man-made techniques to increase shelf life for the sake of profit, led to what we can call the standard American diet, which can also equate to gluttonism. Okay, being a glutton, you're just consuming, and man became more and more enslaved to this idea of taste, of comfort, that it gave it the feeling that it couldn't get any other way other than obtaining it from food. And so man became less of a self-mastery practitioner and more dependent on other forms of life to give it a certain feeling, for it to feel that it could go to sleep, that it could be creative, that it could breathe fresh air whenever it felt comfortable to literally give it that permission to relax and be peaceful. And there's so many wars that were waged across our history because of possession, because man decided that it needed something that other people had, and it had to control them, to tax them, to manipulate them into this system that essentially at the beginning it was slavery, and today it's less of what we call open slavery. It's more of hidden slavery, where we're still working for something that we're being taught that is supposed to nourish us, but is it really nourishing us? Like, is it everlasting nourishment? Do we feel like we can have one meal a day in order to feel satisfied? Apparently not. Man was tricked to consume 3 meals a day, to this habit of consuming and consuming, to keep it on this perpetual pattern, and this pattern that will keep it in the system as the system wants it, whoever devised this system. So food gradually became more and more weaponized against consciousness, because your nervous system, your physiology, and your capacity to use your mind has been gradually dumbed down. And that's because certain foods, they exert certain stressors on physiology. And in particular, what I would refer to as this dehydration effect of gradually making us less and less capable of holding water. Food that we consume needs water in order to be washed out. And then the water that can also be added in to the body can hold itself in a volume that allows a nerve wire of our body to be either narrow or more wide. The idea of how water itself can be a semiconductive material to help data transduct itself from one place to another in our body and communicate across the organism. So in the process of man's need, this illusion that it needs food to consume, man physiology became less and less capable of perceiving the sensitivities of the system. So what Hilton Hotema did describe was the whole process of de-evolution of man, from a state of breatharianism to a state of gluttonism, of what we call today the standard American diet, or SAD diet. So that's what I wanted to share with you, this whole subject of man's higher consciousness. I thank you for listening. You guys have a lovely day wherever you are. Blessings.